Hello, my my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant. Today, I'm going to be discussing this book, Rough Beauty. The subtitle is 40 Seasons of Mountain Living. The author is Karen Avinen. The cover artwork is Fox Face by Thompson Engels, Sarah/Bridgman Images. Throughout the art is throughout the book are watercolor illustrations by Greg Marquez, who is her partner. It says she lives in the Colorado mountains with artist Greg Marquez. This is her first book. This is my third take because I've had to do some revisions a couple times based on various bits of information. But this book is copyright 2018, and when I first picked it up off the shelves, I kind of knew why I hadn't really been interested in this one before. And that's because none of the praise is recognizable, and on the surface it is very similar to another book I've read, Deep Creek. However, Pam Houston's Deep Creek came out in 2020 and Rough Beauty came out in 2018, so there's a very close time frame there. They are, on the surface, similar lives. Women that have dealt with various forms of abuse and neglect and difficulty from their parents, who feel the need to come out west to the Rocky Mountains, find a home in a rural community, and enjoy life there. They find solace in their canine companionship, and part of the narrative is the processing of that close companion's death. They are both full-time writers, or they are both poets and writers by trade, and in both cases they were published in various publications throughout their career. A major difference is that for Karen, it seems her primary source of income was working at a diner in town, a diner called the Merc, and she supplemented that lifestyle with her writing, which brought in additional income. Whereas with Pam Houston, she was more of a professor and writer full time, and then in her Colorado community, less time. Both are framed around fire as well. In Pam Houston's book, Deep Creek, there's an emphasis on a fire tearing through the area, but that is at the end of the book, after she's gone over all of these connections she has to the community, to the state, to her family and friends. And so she has this fire roll through, and it's a cleansing fire. Whereas Rough Beauty starts with this. She lost all of her writings, her possessions, in a fire, and Karen deals with kind of a birthing fire in a way. Fire as cleansing and as rebirth is one way of writing about it. This is, in a way, a rebirth, so a similar kind of fire, but one that starts the narrative. And there's other comparisons that could be made, but also there's a lot of processing grief, processing personal relationships, and that is a common theme in these kinds of books, and I've read that so many other times. The Snow Leopard deals with a lot of those themes from a male perspective. A Lady's Life in the Rocky Mountains deals with some of these themes, but with more wanderlust involved. There's other books all over the place dealing with a lot of these themes, and it seems like the kind of thing that if you're writing about it, you can find an audience. There's 8 billion perspectives in this world, and no matter how many books you read, you're never going to get every perspective dealing with this kind of processing and healing. There's always more to be found in the world. So, this kind of work, though it doesn't bring anything new to the table, is always going to have a home on the shelves. One thing I really liked about this, and this is, by the way, an example of the watercolor that Greg Marquez provided. One thing I do think was a bit different with this one is, similar books that I can think of, Farewell My Subaru or Fire Season, they deal with a lot of those same themes I was just talking about a couple minutes ago. Fire Season doesn't really lock you into a sense of place of community. It locks you into a place of geography. But Farewell My Subaru does deal with the community and their struggles when there's a flood going on. How do you get back to your home? Do you have enough supplies at your home to be unable to access better, like more urban resources for an extended period of time? Karen doesn't quite have to deal with that, but similarly to Farewell My Subaru, but not Deep Creek or Fire Season, is this sense of community and how much that network of people affects life. Now, in Farewell My Subaru, it is still mostly the story of an out-of-towner, and he is getting used to his neighbors, but he doesn't really have a place in that community yet. Whereas in this book, Rough Beauty, there is already a sense that she is a townie, and there's a really good example of it on page 159 at the start of a chapter called Controlled Burn. I'd long vowed to avoid a town romance because proximity and loneliness pulled strange pairings out of thin air and left awkward aftermaths across the mountain. Susie, who split from Joey, ignited a turf war at the Merc, had wagged her finger at me the day she left, saying, "Import your men." She was right. The gene pool was small. No matter who you were, a little Saturday night at the Merc, flirting led to chin-wagging all over town by Sunday brunch. All of this attention tended to step on budding romances, but things were far worse when relationships went sour or someone began comparing your partner's past with your present. Even marriages were not exempt. Plenty of long-term relationships had suddenly gone bad, but none more notoriously than when the town put on a musical. Twice in its history, Jamestown had mounted original productions that made, owing to the twin elixirs of shared artistic passion and rehearsal beers, strange bedfellows, the result of which was the rearrangement of several unions around town. Singing, it seemed, stirred more than just the soul. When couples split, their onerous task was to divide not their homes, but the town between them. Breakups were hard on everyone as new groups were jigsawed from established circles of friends. Sometimes it was easiest when one half of the couple simply moved away. Still, the town had its serial daters, those who tried to love... the town had its serial daters, those who tried on love interests and cast them aside like clothes in a pile. Their reputations, along with their conquests, were the stuff of happy hour and party gossip. My jaw-dropping favorite was Lance, who was just 30 when I first met him. He was a tall, thin drink of water with sandy hair and the aloof charm of David Bowie. Not handsome by any stretch of the imagination, or especially interesting. Just another guy with a beer in one hand and cigarette in the other standing on the Merc porch. And yet he managed to pick off the women in town one by one, and each time, from the awkward all-knees-and-elbows teen who grew into a raven-maned beauty with terrible taste in men to a silver-haired divorcee 20 years his senior, I was shocked. How did he do it? With Sammy, on the other hand, you could see exactly how. She was an athletic woman with snaky brown hair who exuded sex and went through men and women like saucers of delicious cream. A woman so in love with love that she had been married 9 times, twice to the same man. She once slid next to me on the dance floor on a Merc Saturday night, spearing me with what were irresistible feline eyes, purring what a good dancer I was as she rubbed her hand provocatively from my shoulder to my hip. Avoiding romantic imbroglios in Jamestown was a no-brainer. It was a fun segment to read that, but aside from the personality of the town that she lives in, which is really a village in the mountains, there's not much enjoyment I got out of this book because her own personal character and the process of healing through the grief was something I had already read enough times that it felt rote and repetitive to a certain extent. And like, I am skewed because I have been dealing with grief for most of my life, but in this case, it felt readable, but not engaging. And the parts of her writing that I was most interested in were not exclusively about Karen Avinen. So I liked this book enough. I don't think I'm going to keep it on my shelves. It's probably going to go back into the used book ecosystem. But if you find it on a used bookshelf and you are interested in these kinds of narratives, you might enjoy this book. Probably more than me. So, yeah. My name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another used book rant.